What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. Welcome back to another preview video for the Six Nations 2022. This is, of course, where we chuck on a game of Rugby 22 in the background of the teams that are going to be playing over the weekend. And then over the top, we're going to talk about the official teams that have been announced are going to be playing in this game. Going through the teams, going through every player, who we think is going to do well, who we think is going to do badly. Talk overall about the games and finally give a score prediction at the end. This one is going to be between Wales and France, the first Friday night game of the Six Nations. A lot of talk about, so let's get this game kicked off and underway. Alrighty, Dan Big will get us kicked off. We'll set off to the right, a little bit of wind behind us, try and pin them back in their 22. So, Wales versus France is a really big game that goes on in the Six Nations every year. I did the review video for it last year, where it looked, for all intents and purposes, that Wales had already won that game. They got the Grand Slam, everything was going to go really well. And then, of course, we had that Corey Hill dropping the ball and France turning it round and managing to somehow steal that game out, even though I actually think Wales probably deserved to win that one. So who should we talk about first? Let's talk about Wales first going into this one, because Wales had a weird game 2 weeks ago now. I'm gonna probably do what I did in the last round and keep saying last week by accident, as we see Josh Adams go over for a try. So 2 weeks ago we got to see Wales versus England, and what a weird game that was. This is probably one of the more annoying things that we were getting to see now in this Wales team under the Pivac leadership. I'm sure a lot of people like myself watching Wales play just don't quite understand why Wales can be absolutely brilliant but only in like the final 20 minutes. I don't know what it is. I don't know, but it is infuriating to watch. When you watch that game and England just seemed to be all over them in that first half, at some points I was putting my pen down for the team of the week, thinking there was not going to be any Wales players there again. There was just no urgency. They just didn't really look in that game. And then they came out in that second half, changing momentum, less penalties given away, turning the game around a bit, managing to make this fantastic comeback and just falling short in the end. And it's one of those things that gets so annoying in this Wales team, is if they don't play the first half the way they do, they don't need to catch up. They don't need to try and recover these points. And they end up winning more games. And it's so annoying to watch. So going into this game, they're going to need to do an awful lot of big shifts around, including some of the players that have just been named for this week. There's been a lot of moving about, a lot of change of players, but the big thing for me is going to be the penalty count. We saw that last week. Realistically, if Wales kept that penalty count down, I think they beat England and defied quite a few odds, including my own. I really didn't think Wales were going to win that game. And if they just kept that penalty count down and kept Marcus Smith's boot at bay, I think they could have been onto a bit of a winner there. So, looking at the team that has been announced to play in this France game, starting off in this front row, we've got some switches already in this front row, with Thomas coming in now in that loose head prop. We've got Ryan Elias retaining in hooker and Tom Francis in the tight end. Now, this is a big call. We've seen in the games already that France are doing very well in terms of the scrummaging. That forward pack for France is massive. They've done a couple of games this year already where they've done a 6-2 split on the bench. We know they like the longevity of their front forwards, as well as in terms of just how long they leave them on for. People like Cyril Bay, Antonio, these people are playing 55, 60, 65 minutes before coming off, whereas other teams are replacing their front row in the 45th, 50th minutes. The fitness levels in that front team are awesome, and I think it's going to be a real test to see whether Wales are going to be able to deal with that front row. I think the big switch-ups, losing Wyn Jones in this front row, that could be a big call. I think Ryan Elias staying in this front row. I still think Dewi Lake is having a much better Six Nations on the whole than Ryan Elias. I'm going to think that front row may begin to succumb to some pressure later on. Maybe that's why Wyn Jones has been moved to the bench for this week, just to try and keep that front row pack lasting a little bit longer in the game, but we'll see how that gets on. In terms of the lock departments, and Will Rowlands and Adam Beard still going to be retaining their 4-5 positions. They seem to be the only two locks we have pretty much in the whole of Wales now. Will Rowlands did okay last week. It's just the penalty counts. Him and Cuthbert last week, between them, gave away something like 7 penalties. There was just so many, and they just silly penalties, holding on to the ball, not rolling away from the tackle. Just a couple of things. They just need to be tightened up, and this Wales team will work so much better. I feel like Wales are beginning to lose their own games rather than necessarily they're actually getting beaten, bar that Ireland game. That Ireland game was just something else. But hopefully they can work a little bit better this week. They're definitely beginning to synergise a little bit. We are missing that Alan Wynne mixer in the lock, but hopefully they gel together and can sort out against what is arguably one of the best line-out teams now in the world. Going to be a big week for them. In the back row, a little switch here. In fact, a lot of switches, really, actually. Seb Davis going in on the 6 shirt. Navidi back in the team. Did see that he got added to the training schedule. Was surprised to see him in the starting team, but he takes the other flank position in 7. And Talupe Falatau in 8. So, yeah, this is some big calls here. Navidi coming back in after a little while out. You know, big first game to come back into. Personally, I wouldn't have minded to have seen Tame Basher in here. I wouldn't have minded to see Jack Morgan maybe starting this one. Have Navidi on the bench just for that experience later in the game. I don't think Basher is named in the side at all. I'm not sure if there's an injury. I'm in the process of moving house, so my ability to keep up with a lot of the rugby news has been drastically depleted this week, unfortunately. So I'm not sure about too many injuries and stuff, so there might be another reason for that. But a big call there, but Navidi's still a good player to get in. And then Falatau at 8, who didn't have a bad game last week, managed to play the full 80. It was an awful lot of compliments around his actual gameplay. I didn't see that much from him. I thought he had a couple of nice little runs with the ball. He certainly managed to get through a couple of tackles. And the fact that he played 80 minutes was heralded as something, you know, never seen before in World Rugby. I couldn't get over the commentary around it. I think he had a perfectly fine game. There was nothing that was super explosive to me there, but I would still probably prefer to have Falatau at 8 rather than Moriarty. In terms of the backs, then, we'll look at the halfback partnership. Thomas Williams and Dan Bigger, that 9-10 combo. We've seen a couple of switch-ups now. Kieran Hardy came in a little bit. We haven't really seen a lot from Gareth Davis this tournament. Thomas Williams certainly taken over that 9 position. We're just not getting as many sniping runs as I want to see. I want to see the 9s not box kicking, not just being the distributor in the ruck. I want to be seeing them run. You want to be watching Wales do the things that Antoine Dupont does and managing to make some superb gaps. Kieran Hardy certainly was looking for it last week against England. It's nice to see energy from the younger players coming on from the bench. Hopefully we'll see that again this week. In terms of the centre partnership, another change here, which again I might think might be due to an injury potentially, which is going to be in the form of Jonathan Davis coming in on inside centre and Owen Watkin moving to that outside centre. Now, I thought Nick Tompkins was phenomenal last week. He was, I think, my only Wales player in the team of the week for me last week. So the only reason I can see for this drop is that Nick Tompkins has got an injury along the line somewhere. I think Owen Watkins had a good Six Nations so far. I haven't really seen him put too many foots wrong. He's the occasional thing here and there, but nothing too drastic. Jonathan Davis coming in. I haven't seen Jonathan Davis necessarily have the biggest impact from the bench in a game. He hasn't necessarily done anything wrong, so I don't think that's a bad move. Personally, I would prefer Tompkins, Owen Watkin, if they're both available and not injured. I'm not sure about Tompkins, but you know, a bit of leadership in that back row. We know how good the French team are now, being able to spread that wide, looking for those different angles, the crossfield kicks, the sniping runs, the missed passes. They're really beginning to gel now. So a defensive captain in Jonathan Davis, I don't think is a terribly bad move. And then in the back three, I think this is the same as what we saw last week. Josh Adams, on the left wing, Alex Cuthbert on the right wing, and Liam Williams in that fullback position. Now, all three of them having a relatively good game from my memory. It's 2 weeks ago now. Haven't really looked at any highlights or anything since, so I might be a little bit wrong there. Alex Cuthbert making a huge amount of meters in that game. It was nice to see. It's the big positive for Alex Cuthbert is the attacking play. I still maintain that his defence isn't as strong as it could be, and there were a lot of penalties coming from him. And it was not necessarily his fault, but it sort of was. He was making so many nice little runs and stuff, but he got completely isolated. I would maybe like to see him, if he gets isolated and gets tackled, there is nothing wrong with just letting go of the ball and relieving possession. We saw it last week that, you know, Wales was so close to winning that game, and yet Alex Cuthbert, I think, gave away 3 penalties for not holding, or for holding onto the ball and not releasing, So I think if you get tackled and you are isolated, it can sometimes be the better move to just relinquish the ball. You can hold on to it for a little second, but then let go of the ball, let the other team have the ball. I know it's a turnover and defensive coaches probably won't like you turning over the ball. I'd much rather the other team just have the ball and not give away an easy 3. I'm sure Jaminet will probably have been working on his kicking this week, so I'm not sure how much you can rely on just giving them these 3 points over and over and over again. I did say it in last week's video that Marcus Smith isn't the same as a Farrell or a Chris Robshaw or any of these lads. The same rivalry doesn't stem for me from him just looking at him as a person. It's not the same thing. If you gave him 3, he was just going to take it. He wasn't going to be looking to go for the corner, go for the try. They were just going to take 3. And that's all it took in the end. Marcus Smith scoring a bunch of points off of Alex Cuthbert. And so I think they just need to work on those breakdown penalties, just work on what they actually want from the game. And I think Wales could be up for a bit of a better game this week. We are getting towards half-time. I'm rambling as I tend to do when we talk about Wales anyway. So we'll move on to talk about the Wales substitution. So starting off in this front row, we've got Dewi Lake, Wyn Jones and Dylan Lewis. And in all honesty, I think this is a stronger front row than the one already on the field. I think Dewi Lake's been outshining Ryan Elias in every game so far for me. I think I prefer Wyn Jones in that loose head. And Dylan Lewis and Tom Francis, I feel are quite interchangeable. They bring slightly different elements to the game, but I think in terms of like scrummaging areas, I think they're quite interchangeable. So I think this is probably going to be a late game move. They're aware France are going to want to push for those forwards towards that second half. I don't think it's a terrible move. It's just going to be for me whether that front row is going to hold up in the first half, which I think may wield a couple of issues. In terms of the replacement forwards, we've got Moriarty and Jack Morgan, which means technically there's no replacement locks. So I guess the move here would be if a lock needed to come off that Moriarty would come on at 6 and Seb Davis would move to lock, if that's what they're going for. I think in a game against a team that have so many consistently good jumpers in France, I would be quite surprised for them not to have the locks. And I think this actually shows a real big opening for France to just sort of pound that line out. I don't really see Faletau and Navidi competing against the likes of people like Vorki or Valemsa in the air. I think it's going to be a lock-based game. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I feel that line-out could be a bit of a punishing one. And then in terms of the replacement backs, we've got Kieran Hardy in that 21 shirt. Hopefully we'll bring that energy on in the second half, as I've already mentioned. Gareth Anscombe in that 22 shirt. Nice to see back in this Wales team. And finally, Rhys Zammit in that 23 shirt. I was going to say the centre shirt. Why on earth would he be playing centre? Who knows what Pivac's going to try and do. So, I don't think this is a terrible move. I imagine the concept here is if a centre goes off injured, that Josh Adams will move to centre and Rhys Zammit will come on straight on his wing, or if one winger isn't performing how he wants to, Rhys Zammit will come on and fill in that other wing shirt. And then maybe if it's all beginning to go a little bit pear-shaped, you've got Gareth Anscombe who could potentially cover centre, maybe. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe you can cover full-back, but mainly for that fly-half position. Overall, as a 23, it's not a bad Wales 23 by any means. It's certainly not the strongest it could be, but some names are beginning to come back from injury now. And I think they're beginning to get a little bit more steam. They managed to beat Scotland. They came away with a close loss to England in Twickenham, which is no small feat, to be fair. So I think they're on the up and up here, but I think France could be a bit of a different animal. I think a bit of a saving grace for Wales is that they're going to be playing in the Principality Stadium. If this was being played in France, I might have some very different views. Talking of which, we need to talk about France, who came away with yet another win last week, or 2 weeks ago now, against Scotland. They're just looking good. They're moving from strength to strength at this point. I've already got it in my head. I feel like we might be seeing a Grand Slam year for France this year. I did say whoever won the France-Ireland game would go on to win the Six Nations. I still think it's fully on for that. I think France look absolutely superb this year, along with a couple of big players going out with injuries or what have you, and are coming straight back in for this game. So, having a look at the team for this one, starting off in this front row, Cyril Ba, Julien Marchand and Antonio. This is the front three that we're all getting used to seeing now, and they're all playing very, very well. Still a couple of issues for me in Antonio's scrum. It's normally whether his own weight begins to put pressure on that front three. However, it's just the general running play from all three of them is so good. They use them as wrecking balls. And I think it works so well. We're really seeing the punishment. I think this will work well again. In that lock department, Cameron Volke and Valemsa again in that 4-5 shirt. This is what we're going to be seeing every week. Now, this France team is gelling towards this World Cup. They're beginning to pick their standard 15 now. This is definitely where it's moving to. In the back row, Kroos comes in this time on the flanker shirt in 6. Jalanche in the 7 shirt and Gregory Aldrit. There's just so much malleability in this back row for France now. There's so many players. The depth in their squad to replace almost anyone wherever they want to is awesome. I think all of them will going to do really, really well. I think this French 1-8 is just awesome. I think Wales really need to be on the lookout, especially with Sean Edwards now on the defensive coach for France as well. That French defence last week was looking good. There was very few times we really saw Scotland being able to peel through the French defence. Well, I can remember, it's 2 weeks ago. What do I know? It's me, I tend to forget things. But really, my only memory was sort of Duhan van der Merwe getting through, and maybe a couple of the centres, but there was no real clean breaks. And if they were shut down pretty well or applying pressure. Stuart Hogg will probably still be missing his little pass that he didn't get to get over for the try. But I think it's going to work really well. I think as a defensive setup and an attacking setup, this 1-8 looks very, very strong. In terms of the halfback partnership, Dupont and Entermac still there, 9-10, working very well. Entermac's been quiet this year for me. Just doing the groundwork, just doing exactly what he needs to do to get his team over the line. That's still good. That's still what you want from a fly half. So many teams now work around their fly half. They build the team. Marcus Smith, Johnny Sexton, these sort of teams are beginning to try and build a game around their number 10. I just don't think France need it at all. It works so well having him as the distributor. He's also got a nice bit of a wild card about him. He can shift it up a lot. It's really nice to see. I think it's working well. And Dupont, of course, being Dupont, just makes every game that bit more spicy when you see him get his hands on the ball and running around all the players. In the centre partnership, Dante and Ficou are going to be back in that centre partnership again, both of which playing well last week, both of which could have been in multiple people's teams of the week. I was very, very impressed with Dante last week as well, just breaking through the lines, always looking for that support line. He feels a little bit weirdly slow for me. I don't know whether he picked up a bit of an injury in that Scotland game. I didn't see him necessarily hitting anything at pace, considering he's got some big legs on him. I think he could have a good pace running like a bit of a horse, but he's not necessarily the fastest bloke, but he does have the weight behind him. So, crash ball 12, but also just for finding those gaps, he is very, very good. And then in the back three, a bit of a switch up here. We've got Villiers coming back in. He wants his top try scorer of the tournament. He wants to get back in here. Absolutely reckon this isn't a terrible move, especially putting him on Cuthbert's wing, who I do think isn't necessarily the strongest defender. Someone like Villiers, who is bouncing strong defenders off of him and being able to step defenders. I think that's a very good move to put Villiers back on his wing. Get ready for this game. I think we could be seeing potentially some scores coming in on that wing. Mofana moves to the right wing. So no Damien Penaud, who is also not on the bench. So I'm not sure if that's also another injury potentially there. I might have missed that one. And then Jaminet in that full-back position, who... God, that was the worst game I think I've seen from Jaminet last week. Hopefully he will have improved his kicking dramatically going into this week. So many missed kicks from him. Absolutely messed up my fantasy league anyway. So yeah, I'm sure they'll be looking for some improvement there. I don't think they'll hand it back to Entermac. I'm sure he will have been annoyed by that general performance. I'm sure he'll probably be retaining the kicking for this week. And as we are slowly moving towards the end of the game, of course, we need to talk about the French bench, which is a fun little rhyme. Starting off in this front row, Mal Vaca, Gors and Howes. Now again, this is three big players coming on in that second half. The French 1-8 is so interchangeable. It's so brilliant. Mal Vaca loves going on in that second half. Big running player, but also in terms of that driving maul, going for those tries. Never a bad move. I think that works very well for them. In terms of the replacement forwards, they've gone for that 5-3 split this week, and only Flamand and Dylan Cretin going to come in that... maybe 6 shirt. They tend to swap Cross out for Cretin quite a lot. But Flamand, I really want to see more from him. I think he was told a little while back that he swapped from centre to a forward, and he's definitely got some good speed on him. I'm really looking forward to see a bit more from him in this French team. And then the replacement backs, we have Luku, Thomas Ramos, and Lebel. I'm not sure of that player, so that's going to be quite interesting to know. I'm not sure a lot about him, so I'm sure some of the French subscribers can drop down in the comment section what to look out for with him, what position he plays even. I don't think I've ever heard the name before, so really looking forward to getting to see him in some action. That'll be a bit of a switch-up, bit of a new wild card to add into this Wales-France game. But overall, this France team looks big, it looks good, it looks deep, it looks talented. And if you're going to ask me, I think we're on for a French Grand Slam team slowly being generated here. So, in terms of a score prediction going into this game then, to me a lot of it's going to come down to the Welsh discipline in terms of being able to hold the penalty count lower. I'm certainly going to lean towards a French win. I think France are on for the Grand Slam this year now. So I'm going to say France to win, and I don't know if I've got the confidence to say that Wales are going to keep that penalty count super down. I still think they'll give away a decent chunk of points. So I'm going to say France to win. And I'm going to say France to win by... I'm going to go with 15. I think there'll be 3 or 4 penalties too many, and then maybe an extra try here or there. The French defence is also good. It might actually be more, you know. I think one of the big saving graces will be Wales playing at home. I get to go actually watch this game. It's one of the few Six Nations games I'm actually going to have gone and seen live. It'll be my first time watching France live anyway, which will be an awful lot of fun. So really looking forward to that, going down to the Principality and actually watching that game. But I'm definitely going to be interested to know what you guys think. Make sure you do drop down in the comment section your thoughts on the game, the players, what score prediction you're going to give the game, because there's going to be a lot of big talking points about this game. Of course, guys, I am just that one guy on the internet who does talk nonsense about rugby, so make sure you drop everything down in that comment section. Of course, we will be doing one of these for every game going on across the Six Nations. So coming out tomorrow will probably be the 2 preview videos for the other games going on this weekend. It's all a bit shifted because it's the Friday game and then the 2 Saturday games. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel just to keep up to date when all the latest videos come out. And I hope you've enjoyed this one today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.